Hi. How's everything? It's good? Alright. My name's Bruce. This is my little my video channel in my classroom in the forest, and I hope that you've been following along, then you know what's coming, and if you haven't been following along, well, that's fine too. Anyway, here you go. You might know I like to talk about people, I like to talk about things, I like to talk about ideas, and right now I'm having a few challenges getting me a chalkboard to stay stable. But that'll happen. Give me a second or two. That's okay. All right. Now, here's what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about a person here for a second. Person I'm going to talk about is Joey Smallwood. Joey Smallwood is the last father of Canadian Confederation. He's one of our founding members, as it were, of the club. I mean, going back to John A. Macdonald, who has, well, you can talk about lots of good things and bad things about John A. Macdonald. Let's talk about Joey Smallwood. Joey, up until like 1949, the island of Newfoundland was actually not part of Canada. It was a separate country. It was still part of the British Empire, but it was not part of Canada. And at that time, after the World War II, Newfoundland was having some difficulty, and so there was discussions about what to do exactly. So eventually, Joey Smallwood, he was the prime minister. I guess he was the prime minister of Newfoundland at the time or something. But he's credited with bringing Newfoundland, the province, into Canada. The reason I mentioned Newfoundland and Joey Smallwood is because Joey Smallwood, I met him personally, and I was quite young at the time, maybe 7 or 8 years old, I'm not certain. But Joey Smallwood was at a book signing in Ottawa, and he was signing his memoir, his book, which was entitled "I Chose Canada," meaning that before Newfoundland was in Confederation of Canada, there were choices. I mean, there was things that there are options, and I'm forever grateful to Mr. Smallwood and the other people that were involved in bringing Newfoundland into Canada, because it's my firm belief that Canada is far richer for having Newfoundland in our club of the nation than we would be without. And hello to the citizens in Newfoundland and Labrador, and thank you very much for being part of Canada. And I'm confident that there's moments when you perhaps think that that maybe you might have chosen a different path, but nonetheless, that's the way it goes. Okay, so Newfoundland. Now, Joey Smallwood. It's enough on that for a second. Now, if you also know that I tend to talk about things that are related to economics. And I'm going to talk about something that's a little bit practical here for a second, and to do with economics, and that is electric vehicle charging. Okay? So there's a discussion I heard came up, and there's some... And this I'm going to talk about in the context of Newfoundland, but this applies everywhere. Okay, these ideas are going to apply absolutely everywhere. So there's a question in Newfoundland now: is who should pay for electric vehicle charging infrastructure installation? Okay, not everybody kind of is on the same page with this. Actually, most people are on the same page, but there's some people aren't, and they're expressing their views, and that's wonderful. I mean, if you follow my videos, I've said that this idea in a democracy of expressing views and dissension and alternate views and ideas, that's fabulous. And what happens is the good ideas, they're going to percolate to the surface. Okay, now let's talk about this. So what page will I use? I don't know. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to go on this page. I don't know if you can see this really well, but perhaps you can. Okay, so we're going to start off, we're going to say, this is badly drawn. If you've been following, you know I'm not much of a drawer, but this is a car. And it's an electric car. It's an EV. Okay? It's an electric car. Now, there's a bunch of different ways you can charge this car. I mean, put electricity into it, but broadly, you can plug it in your house, or you can plug it in somewhere else. And if you're on a road trip, you tend not to take your house with you, so it's necessary for you to plug it in somewhere else. Now, thankfully, the technology exists right now to impart enough energy into this car in about, say, between 15 minutes and 25 minutes, maybe a little bit longer, maybe a little bit shorter, but you can impart enough energy in that short of time to go approximately, let's just say, 250 miles if you live in the land of miles, or 400 kilometers if you live in the land of kilometers. Okay, now 400 kilometers it's right on about 4 hours driving, which if you take a look at me, you know that I'm a man that likes his dinner, and so 4 hours is about my limit between sustenance. So I'm going to stop, I'm going to use the washroom, I'm going to do whatever else. I might have a sandwich or a plate of poutine, and I'm going to charge up my car. Okay, and that charging is going to take, like I said, it's about 20 minutes, and then I have my 400 kilometers. I can get in the car and happily drive off. That's when everything goes great. Okay, but for the sake of this argument, we're not going to get it mired down in details. We're going to stick to it. Okay, so you drive up to this thing, the car, and you plug it into a thing that looks like it's a DC charger. Okay, you plug your car in. I'm telling you, that's going to take, make it simple, 15 minutes, 400 kilometers. All right. Okay, you got that. There we are. Now, this thing here needs electricity. So where does that come from? Well, that comes from, let's just say, the pole, or it's buried underground, goes back here, and then let's just say the electricity. The electricity has to come from somewhere. Well, thankfully it can come from solar. That can be located close. There's a bunch of choices, but let's pretend that electricity, and we're, like I said, I was talking about Joey Small a little while ago, so we're going to be in Newfoundland here for a second. That electricity goes through the wires, and say we're going backwards. We're going from the car to the charger. We're saying, where does this come from? So we're following it back, and we get to the pole and the wires, and we go thousands of kilometers or miles. It's for the sake of scale, it's the same. And so then you wind up here, and we have Newfoundland is a thing that kind of looks like this. Okay, St. John's is here. St. Anthony is here. Anthony is here. This little bit of Newfoundland is called this little bit of Newfoundland is called the Great Northwestern Peninsula. And if you happen to be visiting Newfoundland and you're in this area and you say to someone something, they're not going to say here. They're not going to say the peninsula. It is the Great Northwestern Peninsula. That's what it's called. That's what they call it. They use the whole. The last time I was there, they used the whole descriptor, and I think that's beautiful. Okay, so there's this. Now over here, we have getting a little bit overlapped, but this is mainland. So this is Labrador. It's enormous. This up here, this is kind of extends and actually goes kind of like this. This is Quebec. You can look at a better map if you like. That's Quebec. Okay, but there's two things that exist up here. So this charger thing goes back. We're following back, goes through the wires. Okay, goes through the wires, and then the electricity comes from. Let's pretend that it comes from somewhere around here. You've done all kinds of work, and you have it up there. Now I'm gonna move it back here for a second, and hopefully my devices will cooperate with this. And I remember following this wire, so we followed it all the way back. And if my mind will allow me to do this, Newfoundland is here like this. Okay, this is peninsula. There's actually this is Hudson Bay. This is a badly drawn polar bear, and he's sitting there. He's eating a seal. He's happy. But up here, there's this thing and there's this thing. Okay, this thing is what's called Muskrat Falls. It's a hydroelectric project. It's one way that you could generate electricity is with gravity and water. It works like a charm, sort of. Well, it does. And this one over here is Churchill Falls. Okay, so Churchill Falls creates electricity also. But there's this thing, which is the Muskrat Falls, and there's actually a second part of it that's going. But this Muskrat Falls thing here, it produces, let's do round numbers, produces 1,000 megawatts. Okay, so this thing's flying, and you got 1,000 megawatts being extracted from the gravity and the water that's flowing here. Well, what's 1,000 megawatts? Anyway, well, 1,000 megawatts is 100,000 kilowatts. Okay, that sounds pretty good. Now, depending upon situations, your house, nominally, like normal use, your house is consuming, let's just say it's around 2 kilowatts. So this thing is producing enough electricity for 50,000 houses. That's just this one thing. But then you got this other thing over here that's about 5 times as big. So whatever. So right around here, we're producing enough electricity 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for, let's just say, make the conversation easy, 1 million houses. Okay, 1 million houses. It's less than that, but it's close enough. You can say 1 million houses between da and da. Now, a lot of this electricity, it's happening produced in Quebec, and if you happen to be watching in New York, well, your electricity is good chance it's coming from there. It's coming from everywhere. It's getting fed into the grid. Now, remember, we started off talking about a car. And the car is there, and it's plugged into the charger. The charger's plugged into the wires. The wires are attached to the telephone, to the pole. The pole goes attached to a bunch of other wires, and eventually the wires make it to the generating site. Now, this is kind of an oversimplification, and I'm opening myself up to a lot of yeah buts, and that's okay, because this thing is underway. Okay, it's under production. So, and the motivator here started with someone saying, well, who should pay for that charger? Well, look, that charger, let's just pretend, make it an easy number. Say that charger, the installed cost of the charger, the cost of the box thing and connecting it to this telephone pole thing, let's just say that was, I don't know, $50,000. I mean, and remember, I've been saying before that governments don't actually spend money. It's a bit of a funny thing that you have to wrap your mind around. But if you really want to get down to the core of economics and economic development and human society, this is an important and subtle but it's not even subtle. It's a bang yourself over the head with it point. But it's important. Governments don't spend money. Okay. It's related to resources, and money is kind of like a language. Like if you take 2 random humans, like from planet Mars, say there's humans there, they don't speak English, but or French or Portuguese or Chinese or Spanish or Italian or whatever. They don't speak this, but they're humans, and inside you have your human. So you're inside your thought, your being are your thoughts. Your language is the mechanism of expressing your thoughts. Okay, your comprehension of languages allows you to understand the other people's thoughts. And I just had this idea that, in a way, that's a way of thinking about money, is because money is the thing that allows the expression of enterprise and such, but it's not the core of the thing. Okay. Anyway, but this we'll put a price on it. $50,000. Okay. Well, that's this bit, $50,000. Remember, we talk about utility too. Now, this thing up here. Okay, so how much did that thing cost? Well, let's just say, round numbers, this cost this much. Oh, I'm gonna make that into a dollar sign, and this costs 10. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. There. This costs $10 billion, $10,000 million. Okay? Now, in order for this thing to work, you need this. Okay? So 10,000 million. So 50,000 times 1,000 is 50 million. 50,000 times 10,000 is 500 million. 50,000 times 100,000 is 5 billion. So 50,000 times 200,000. Somebody can do the arithmetic, but 50,000 times 200,000. This is 1/200,000th of the whole enterprise here. Okay, all right. Keep that in mind. Now, the second thing is, now, where did this money come from? Okay, remember, governments don't spend money, but you got to talk about it in a way, right? So we're going to talk about the money. This money came from the good citizens of Newfoundland and Labrador. This money came from the good citizens of Canada. This money is in a sense, it's opportunity. So you had a choice between doing the opportunity cost. Well, it's a bit vague when it gets into government, but you could say they had a choice between this and that, which technically is not true, but we're going to say that it's true. It's not true, because if you're talking about a government, they don't spend money, so they don't have the choice between this and that. They have the choice between this and that, or nothing. You can do this and you can do that, okay, which is usually the better idea. But anyway, okay, so you have this, all right? So you have that. Now let's go over here. We're going to just talk about, for a second, Newfoundland, okay? I'm going to start up here. I'm going to draw a bigger picture. This is Newfoundland. Kind of looks like this. It goes down here. There's a thing down here. Goes up like this. Okay. Now, if you're unhappy, and there's more of it over there, and there's little islands and such. Okay. So this is This is St. Anthony. This is a place called Angli. This is a place called Port au Choix. This is Port au Basques. This is Burjo. There's little islands down here that are French. This is Saint Pierre Miquelon. Point is, you have this island here. We're going to ignore for a second this bit over here, which is Labrador. So on this island, there's all these people live there. Okay, so if you remember, these people have contributed to this Muskrat Falls. They've contributed to Churchill Falls. They've contributed to the Lower Churchill Falls. They've contributed to lots and lots and lots of things. Okay, now they've had help along the way by many, many entities, but they've contributed to lots and lots and lots of things. Okay, specifically, they've contributed to this. Okay, so they're into this for $10 billion along with the rest of Canada. And the reason why you do this is because we want to expand our production possibility curve, and the government wants to fulfill its obligation of being the government, which is to maximize the well-being of everyone. Okay, now, so you're here, wherever you are. Let's just say you're a person that lives here, okay? Now, what you do here is you have your car, and you're a fisher guy, so you have your truck like that, and you have your boat, boat is a separate issue for now. We'll leave that alone. But you take your car, and you want to go to here. Okay, all right. So you go to here. So you take your car that you have to pay for. The car requires oil changes. You got to pay for those. The car requires all kinds of things. You got to pay for those. Car requires gasoline. You got to pay for that. And if you've purchased gasoline on the island of Newfoundland, well, you know that, goodness gracious, it's a little bit spendy. Okay, I don't know what it is, but it's maybe like $8 a gallon or $9 a gallon if you live in gallon land, and it's about $2 a liter if you live in liter land, okay, just to you understand. All right, so let's say you're going to fill up your car, and it's going to cost you, no kidding, $140. Okay, $140. Well, that's a little bit upsetting. And you're going to do that once or twice a week. Well, you're going to have a long, hard thought before you go to groceries if you're spending $140 of your money that you have to work really, really hard for to go for groceries. Okay, now now this gasoline it comes and do a big long talk about where that comes from, and it's not as simple as you think, okay? But it comes from somewhere. And there you go. Now, so there's discussion about this thing, putting this electrical thing. Now, first of all, you have a house, okay? So then what you've done is you heard about these electric vehicles. So you heard they're awful expensive, but you go, what the heck? Everything's expensive. So you buy one, and let's just say it costs you $50,000 for your electric car. Okay, well that's a lot. Let's just say that works out to $1,000 a month, $800 a month for your payments forever, because people tend to do the payments. I mean, that's a kind of a thing. So $800 a month. Okay, so now all of a sudden you don't have to spend this $140 every time you go for groceries, which is about once a week, right? So that's $140. Call it $150. Call it $600 a month. All right. Well, then you got the oil changes. You're not doing those, so whatever. So pretty soon, this idea of owning this car is pretty attractive. Okay. So this thing, this electric vehicle charger, the connectivity of this is it's providing you and your family and your fellow residents with utility, okay, with good and your capacity to use it. Now, at this exact moment on the island of Newfoundland, in terms of electric cars, I don't know how many there are exactly, but I think it's a number like 400. Okay, it's like 400. I think it's more than that, but it's like 400, but it's getting more. Okay, that's it. So more and more people are reaping the benefit of these things. Okay, so remember, you've spent $10 billion, so it's a little scooch more to make this connection, okay? And that connection is benefiting an awful lot of people. Okay, now, there you are. Now, you could, so should the same people that are doing the $10 billion, should they spend the extra $40,000 for the connection to charge your car at a higher rate of speed so you can make your road trips to get your groceries? I'm saying absolutely. There you go. There's no question about it in my mind whatsoever. The second thing is, now let's do a different scenario. Talk about utility, marginal utility, benefits, okay? Let's pretend that there were no electric vehicle chargers in charging high-speed DC ones in Newfoundland. None, zero. So let's say, should we get one? Yes. Should the government pay for it? Absolutely. I mean, should we regard this as a shared good that we can all benefit from? Absolutely. Okay, now let's say there are two. There's already one, so the second one should be, well, absolutely, but a tiny little bit less absolutely. Okay, well, let's see the more of it. Okay, so now I'm saying that over here, let's easier number 500 EVs. And that's going up all the time. So there's 500 EVs that are owned and operated by people on the island of Newfoundland. Okay, well, let's go over here. Over here, in this area, this is Quebec, okay? Quebec. Now, is there electric vehicles there in Quebec? Yeah, at this exact moment in Quebec, I'm going to try to find a place to write this out, but Quebec has 170,000 electric vehicles, 170,000 electric vehicles. So let's pretend that a few of these people, say 1,000 people, want to take their electric vehicles and go to Newfoundland and go on vacation. Okay, so that's 1,000 people. They're going to go to Newfoundland, going to be on vacation. They're going to stay there for 5 nights. Right, 5 nights. It's 5,000 hotel nights. That's going to happen. They're going to eat in restaurants. So that's I forget where I was at with the number exactly, but each person is going to eat in a restaurant about 3 or 4 times a day. They're going to buy souvenirs. They're going to do a whole bunch of things. They're going to have themselves a time in Newfoundland, and it's going to be awesome. Okay, now, so these electric vehicle chargers are making this possible for this portion of the population that has a high propensity of going on trips and spending money and enriching the province of Newfoundland. Now remember this idea, I'm talking about Newfoundland, but it applies in Alabama, it applies in Louisiana, it applies in California, it applies in Lithuania, it applies absolutely everywhere. Okay? Everywhere. All right. That's it. Okay. Now another thing that happens with electric, this idea of electrify everything. Now I'm going to zoom in here for a second. Now, if you imagine Newfoundland, this new map I'm drawing kind of starts up here. But let's concentrate on this little area down here. Okay. This is Port aux Basques. Port aux Basques. And the ferry comes over in here from North Sydney. Okay. Right in here. Now right in here in Port aux Basques, people live. They've lived there for essentially a century. There's houses that are there that were built 40 and 50 and 60 years ago. People in Port aux Basques. And then what we had was called post-tropical storm Fiona, but let's just call it Hurricane Fiona came. And Hurricane Fiona decimated this. Okay. Decimated. Now, if you're kind of a little bit new to the game, new to it, you're going to say, oh, wait a second, there's been storms in Newfoundland forever. True. There's been hurricanes forever. True. Things have been damaged by hurricanes forever. True. Okay. But the game's changing, and the reason why the game's changing is because of anthropogenic, man-made emissions into the environment. We're talking about greenhouse gases, largely carbon dioxide and methane. Another one. Okay, so what's happened is the greenhouse gases have made the ocean more warm. There's more energy in the ocean. Hurricanes get their energy and their ferocity from the ocean, basically. So if the ocean has more energy, then the storms are stronger. That's it. The ocean has more energy because carbon dioxide is blanketing the earth and causing it to heat up. So anything that you can do to reduce combustion and reduce carbon dioxide emissions is a positive step. Now, I can make the argument, and I will in another video, that it's the accumulation of carbon dioxide that has destroyed this person's house. Okay. This person's house has been devastated by the accumulation of carbon dioxide. There's many other effects, but the magnitude of this storm absolutely unprecedented is a word you don't like to say, but it's unprecedented. One way to explain it is to say that years ago, recently, there were no waves. There's a thing called the Ocean Meteorological Forecast. It talks about wave height and stuff like that. So years ago, there were no waves forecast in the vicinity of here with the Strait of Belle Isle or a little bit between Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. There were no waves forecast there that say that we're in the vicinity of 8 meters high. Actually, I think it was 8 meters high. There were no waves forecast. Then there were no waves measured ever that were like 7 meters high or 6 meters high. Okay, ever measured. Okay, this one, they actually had waves that were 12 and 14 meters high, which is a big deal. Like it's huge. It's the difference between, and this is literally true, it's the difference between that house, between the people sitting in that house and looking at the ocean and saying, goodness gracious, that's a big storm, and having the people sitting in that house and going, goodness gracious, our house is gone and we're drowning, and that really happened. Wow, this is a long video, but I started off talking about this idea who should pay for the electric car chargers, and it's a response to a guy who's going on some radio show about, basically he's saying not me, okay, and I'm explaining that reduction in greenhouse gases are good for everyone. I'm trying to explain that this idea that government and their funny relationships between government and money and expenditure, and the role of government, which is to maximize well-being for everyone, and that these electric car chargers, at least the nascent ones, like the first bunch, are definitely a public good. Okay, now I said, like, so when Newfoundland gets to the point where there's, let's just say there's some number, arbitrary, let's just say there's 500 high-speed DC fast charging plugs in the island of Newfoundland, at that moment, should the government build the 501st one? I'm going to say absolutely not. But when the number is at 0, should they build the first one? Then the answer is absolutely yes. And remember that I think we worked it out that this $40,000 or $50,000 for the electric vehicle plug at the end, that last bit of connection, that was 1/500,000th or 1/400,000th of the actual cost of the electricity. There's a bunch more that I want to say about the Muskrat Falls and electricity in on the eastern part of Canada and Newfoundland and such, but I think this thing is just, I've been going on for a while, so I'm gonna give it a stop. If you have managed to watch this video, thank you. And if you disagree with me, please leave a comment. If you're so inclined, please subscribe. In general, thank you. Thank you again to Mr. Smallwood for making Newfoundland a part of Canada. This the thing that I've been talking about is electric vehicle charging. The idea that I've been talking about is that it's definitely a public good, and it's doing this notion of expanding the production possibility curve. Okay, it's these are the things we have, these are the things we know, and it's a combination of what we have and what we know that allow human beings to thrive and exist on our planet, and to expand and enjoy. Remember, expansion, the criteria shifts and all that. Okay, but anyway, my name's Bruce. This is my channel. Thank you. Please subscribe. Take it easy. Okay. Oh, goodness gracious.